We can get more on this. We can speak to the journalist and the filmmaker John Pilger, who is a supporter of Mr. Assange. He's joining us from Sydney. John, you supported Julian Assange. You offered him financial help as well. Now that he's broken his bail terms, do you feel let down by what's happening?
No, not at all. And none of us feel let down. In fact, we feel very encouraged by the fact that he has, by his action, seized back the initiative and quite clearly reset the agenda. He's put the British government on the back foot, so much so that it's made ridiculous statements about storming an embassy in the centre of London that it's had to pretty well backtrack on. So, on the contrary, no.
But what do you make about his choice of where to seek asylum? The fact that he's chosen the Ecuadorian embassy, a country which itself doesn't necessarily always support journalists.
Well, it supports journalists, actually, at least as much, if not more, than journalists, independent journalists that are supported in the United Kingdom. And I've been a journalist in Britain for a very long time, and I can assure you that press freedom is as great as it is, if not more so, in some respects, in Ecuador and little Ecuador than it is often in Britain. So that's a red herring. The reason he's, as you say, chosen Ecuador, a number of countries offered him asylum, but Ecuador was clearly prepared to follow through. It went through all the legal process. A huge document was prepared showing that Assange is under considerable threat. So Ecuador was very, very, very keen and very specific about what it was offering, and that it was offering asylum based on the legal position under international law, and it saw that its legal position was correct, and only then did it finally offer asylum. So I think of all the countries that have offered Assange asylum, Ecuador Ecuador's offer has been certainly the most legally researched and the most secure. And it also comes from a part of Latin America that has seen its own transformation in recent years. This is not understood in Britain because it's hardly reported. But in countries like Ecuador, Venezuela, Bolivia, and further south in Argentina and elsewhere in Latin America, there has been an extraordinary change. And for the Foreign Office to write such a Victorian letter, inflammatory letter to the Ecuadorians in the 21st century really speaks volumes about the ignorance of what has happened in Latin America. And it really, I would have thought, has simply strengthened the resolve in that country and in that part of the world to support the decision to give Assange asylum.
Well, some would argue that the Foreign Office was simply flagging up the Diplomatic and Consular Premises Act, but what would you say to those...
I can barely hear you. You'll have to speak up.
John, what would you say to those people who would argue that perhaps Julian Assange's choice of Ecuador was because of his rather friendly relationship with the president following his interview on Russian television, a television station on which itself is potentially a promoter of the Kremlin rather than of free speech?
Well, I didn't hear much of that question, but I'll go and try and guess what you're saying. I think what you're saying is that why did Assange make his decision because he interviewed Carrera on his Russia Today program. Undoubtedly that helped it. They spoke to each other, and I don't see anything controversial about that, nor do I see anything controversial about him being on a program on Russia Today nor do I see anything controversial about me being on the BBC, so I'm not quite sure what the point is.
OK, John Pilger, as always, good to talk to you. Thank you very much.